This girl was insulted, harassed, and handcuffed as soon as she got off the plane by two policemen who abused their power and thought they could do whatever they wanted. But they did not know that the girl had a very special identity. What will happen next? What will be the outcome of the two policemen? Let's listen to this dramatic and special story. The golden light of a Los Angeles afternoon filtered through the thick glass of the Tom Bradley International Terminal, casting long streaks of light across the polished floor. Isabel Moreau pulled her small ivory suitcase behind her, squinting as she stepped out of the cool air of the terminal into the dry heat and hustle and bustle of the arrivals area outside Los Angeles International Airport. Her thick jet-black hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, revealing a slender neck and delicate pearl earrings. At 27, Isabel possessed a sharp, intelligent beauty, with healthy, honey-brown skin and large, bright eyes that exuded determination. The perfectly tailored suit hugged her well-proportioned figure, combined with red-soled Louboutin heels and a black Saint Laurent handbag in her hand, all creating an overall luxurious, confident look, the image of a successful woman who had just returned from a business trip to New York. The trip was quite tiring, with endless meetings at the partner's office, but Isabel still maintained her composure. She took out her latest phone, quickly scrolled through her contacts to call her father, telling him that the plane had landed safely and she was waiting for the car he sent to pick her up. A slight smile crossed her lips when she thought of her father, a strict man but very loving to his only daughter. Despite being busy with a huge workload, he always arranged everything carefully for her. The air outside the station was organized chaos. Car horns blared, engines roared, suitcase wheels squealed on the pavement, people called out to each other in a variety of languages. The smell of car exhaust, mixed with the scent of fast food from nearby stalls and the strong scent of perfume from someone who had just passed by. Isabel pressed herself against a large concrete pillar, her eyes darting around for the family's familiar black sedan. Not far away, two Los Angeles airport police officers were leaning against their patrol car, their faces showing the weariness of the end of a shift. The older one, Frank Doyle, was in his late 40s, a stocky man with a rumpled uniform and a prominent beer belly. His gray-blue eyes scanned the crowd with a lazy but undisguised scrutiny, especially of those he considered outliers. Next to him was Tim O'Connell, much younger, in his 20s or 30s, tall and thin, with a rather childish face. O'Connell seemed less attentive, mostly looking down at his shoes or glancing in the direction Doyle was pointing. Doyle's gaze stopped abruptly when it caught Isabel's eye. He narrowed his eyes, appraising her from head to toe. The young black woman's striking beauty and expensive clothing immediately caught his attention, but not in an admiring way. In Doyle's prejudiced mind, the image did not fit his expectations. He nudged O'Connell in the ribs, smirking dismissively. "Look, Timmy," Doyle said quietly, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It must be some lost Instagram star. He looks like he just stepped off a movie set." O'Connell looked up in the direction of Doyle's hand, smiling awkwardly as well. He was inexperienced and often went along with the jokes or comments of his older colleague. Doyle pushed himself out of the patrol car, adjusting the brim of his hat. "Go ahead and check her out. Maybe she needs police help." His knowing wink told O'Connell that this was no routine checkup, but a diversion to kill time. They moved toward Isabel, their steps deliberately slow, creating a powerful presence. Isabel, who was staring at the road, didn't notice them until Doyle stood directly in front of her, O'Connell off to the side, forming a small circle. "Good afternoon, beautiful lady," Doyle said, trying to sound friendly, but failing to hide the condescension and the scrutiny that swept over her. "Where are you going? Standing all alone?" Isabel jumped slightly, looking up at the two policemen. She frowned slightly, feeling uncomfortable with Doyle's sudden approach and his rude gaze. "I'm waiting for a car," she replied briefly, her voice cold, and then turned away. hoping they would take the hint and leave. But Doyle had no intention of doing so. He took another step, invading her personal space. Waiting for a car? What kind of car is that, picking up a beauty like you? He chuckled, his gaze stopping deliberately on her YSL bag. This bag must be worth my entire monthly salary? What do you do to make so much money? The question was so cryptic and personal that it really annoyed Isabel. She turned around and looked Doyle straight in the eye. Officer, my job and the price of this bag are none of your business. Please keep your distance. Isabel's bluntness seemed to irritate Doyle even more. He laughed louder, turning to O'Connell. See, Timmy? She's a bit of a prick. She's probably used to being pampered. O'Connell laughed along, moving closer. That's true, Frank. But you do look beautiful. This suit ... He ran his eyes down Isabel's body indecently. Suits you very well. Isabel's patience was broken. This was no longer curiosity. This was sexual harassment and discrimination based on both her race and appearance. She felt degraded, treated like a toy for these two to enjoy. Her face turned cold, her voice hard. I demand that you stop this immediately, she said clearly, trying to keep her composure despite the anger boiling in her chest. You are harassing me. This is not how police officers should conduct their duties. I will remember your names and badge numbers. Isabel's words, especially the memorization of names and numbers, were like a bucket of cold water on Frank Doyle's complacency. The smile on his face disappeared, replaced by a look of malice. How could a black little girl, no matter how well dressed, dare to question the police? Doyle's hurt ego and sense of authority were challenged, causing his anger to flare up. Oh, and now you have the nerve to memorize numbers? Doyle growled, moving closer to Isabel, his voice full of menace. Who do you think you are, talking to the police like that? Do you know who you're talking to? Tim O'Connell, seeing Doyle's anger, also immediately changed his attitude. He stood up straight, his hand on the hilt of his baton, his eyes looking at Isabel with a warning look, no longer the childishness from before. I am a citizen being harassed by you, Isabel shot back, not backing down even as her heart beat faster. Her knowledge of the law and her pride would not allow her to silently endure this abuse of power. Your behavior is unacceptable and violates the code of conduct of the profession. Breach of rules? Doyle sneered viciously. What makes you say that? Are you a lawyer? His tone was sarcastic. Or is it a street lawyer? It doesn't matter if I'm a lawyer or not, Isabel said, trying to keep her voice calm. What matters is that you're abusing your authority. I've done nothing wrong. Please leave me alone. Leave you alone? Doyle sneered. Not now. You're being defiant. I suspect you of disturbing the peace. He spoke loudly, attracting the attention of the curious onlookers who had begun to gather. Several phones were raised. Show me your identification, Doyle ordered, his voice harsh. Isabel straightened. I will not produce my papers unless you give me a valid reason and legal basis for the request. I am not causing any trouble. You are the ones approaching and harassing me. Isabel's fierce, legalistic resistance only made Doyle lose control. He took it as a blatant challenge. Enough! Resisting an officer, he roared, his face red with anger. O'Connell, handcuff her. Take her to the station. O'Connell, without hesitation this time, sprang into action. Isabel cried out in protest as her arms were grabbed and twisted behind her. She tried to pull away, not to attack, but as a natural reaction to the unreasonable restraint. What are you doing? Let me go! You have no right! But her strength was no match for two strong, angry men. They wrestled her against a concrete pillar, her screams mingling with Doyle's shouts and the shocked murmurs of the crowd. Her expensive suit was grabbed roughly, becoming wrinkled. Her tightly tied hair came undone, a few strands falling across her face. Clack! The cold metal handcuffs tightened around Isabel's wrists, causing a sharp pain. Tears of resentment welled up in her eyes, but she bit her lip to stop them. This humiliation, being treated like a criminal in the middle of the airport, in front of so many eyes, just because she dared to stand up for herself, was unbelievable. Doyle looked at the restrained Isabel, his face full of glee. He leaned close to her ear, his voice full of malice. "See? Don't be smart with the police, you arrogant nigger. Let's see if you can still talk back at the station." The racial slur was uttered nakedly, without any cover. O'Connell held Isabel's arm tightly, avoiding eye contact, but his expression showed the tension he felt at the escalation of the situation and Doyle's words. However, he did not intervene. Isabel felt a cold anger and a vague fear begin to take over. This was too far gone. She knew she had to do something before they really dragged her away and things got worse. "Stop!" Isabel's voice cut through the chaos. Even handcuffed and in pain, there was an authority in her voice that made the two officers pause. "Do you know what you've done?" Doyle sneered, still not realizing the change in the situation. "'Cause what trouble? 'Cause trouble to arrest a rebel like you." Isabel took a deep breath, looking Doyle straight in the eye, then O'Connell. Her eyes were sharp as knives, no longer filled with fear or resentment, only cold warning. "Do you really want to know who you just handcuffed?" "Who cares?" Doyle replied irritably, motioning for O'Connell to drag Isabel away. "Then listen carefully," Isabel said, her voice hard, each word etched into the air. "My father is U.S. Attorney Marcus Moreau, and I'm sure he would be very, very concerned about how LAXPD officers treat his daughter." The name Federal Attorney Marcus Moreau struck like a thunderbolt. Both Frank Doyle and Tim O'Connell stood frozen like statues. Attorney Moreau was not just any ordinary attorney. He was one of the most powerful and respected attorneys in California, known for his fairness but also for being extremely strict. Touching his only daughter? That was something no police officer would dare to think of. Doyle's smug smile froze, then slowly disappeared, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment. The red of anger on his face quickly turned ashen. Cold sweat began to form on his forehead and temples. He looked from Isabel to O'Connell, his mouth stammering. Tim O'Connell's reaction was even worse. His face was as white as a sheet, his eyes wide with horror. He let go of Isabel's grip on his arm reflexively, taking a step back as if he'd been touched by fire. He knew it instantly. They'd made an irreversible mistake. They'd harassed, humiliated, and handcuffed the daughter of a man who could ruin their career with a single phone call. "Prosecutor Moreau?" Doyle finally managed to get out, his voice shaking uncontrollably. You're joking, right? You can't be—" "What reason do you have for joking in this situation, Officer Doyle?" Isabel replied, her voice icy, emphasizing his name. "Your number is 784, and Officer O'Connell's is 1529, right? I remember that very well. Call your department and check the family file on Prosecutor Moreau, or you can wait for my father's lawyer to contact your superiors directly." Her firm assertion and her precise recall of their numbers were the final blow that crushed any lingering doubts. Doyle and O'Connell were now completely engulfed in fear. "Oh, God. No. No way," Doyle muttered, his hands shaking as he searched for the handcuff keys in his hip pocket. The keys rattled against each other. He was so flustered that he almost dropped the whole bunch. Miss Moreau!" Doyle hurriedly uncuffed Isabel, his movements so clumsy that they almost hurt her more. I'm sorry. 1,000 apologies. We really didn't know. This is all a misunderstanding. A terrible misunderstanding." His demeanor changed 180 degrees. The arrogant, rude look disappeared completely, replaced by a submissive, fearful look. His voice was flattering, trying to sound apologetic, but there was no sincerity, only terror at the impending consequences. O'Connell stammered along. Yes, Miss Moreau." Please forgive us. We were just a little stressed at the end of our shift. We meant no harm. We really didn't mean any harm." They began to try to brush the dirt off Isabel's suit, asking if she was hurt, if she needed water or medical help. This fake, ridiculous concern was a stark contrast to the brutality of just minutes before. Isabel took a step back, away from them, her eyes filled with contempt and disgust at the two trembling figures before her. She reached up to straighten her disheveled hair and rumpled clothes, trying to regain her composure despite the turmoil inside her. "A misunderstanding?" Her voice was sharp. "You call stopping me, calling me a racist, vulgar, and handcuffing me like a criminal a misunderstanding?" She shook her head. "No, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an abuse of power, and you will be held accountable for your actions." At that moment, a man in a police uniform with the rank of sergeant appeared. He looked like the shift supervisor, called in due to the commotion and the handcuffs. He approached, taking in the strange sight. Isabel Moreau, well-dressed but disheveled, had just been released from her handcuffs, and officers Doyle and O'Connell, their faces drained of color, were trying to explain something. "What's going on here?" the sergeant asked, his voice stern. "Status report, Doyle." Doyle turned, his face paling even more when he saw his superior. He faltered, trying to tell the story in a way that would mitigate his guilt, but his words were disjointed and contradictory. Isabel didn't wait for Doyle to finish. She stepped forward, looking directly at the sergeant. "Sergeant, I'm Isabel Moreau. I was just harassed, verbally abused with racial and sexist slurs by two of your officers, Doyle and O'Connell, and then illegally arrested and handcuffed without any justification." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And I'm the daughter of federal attorney Marcus Moreau." The sergeant froze. The name carried a terrible weight. He looked at Isabel, then at his two trembling subordinates. His face was one of shock and extreme concern. He knew that this was not going to be a simple matter. "Doyle! O'Connell! You two follow me to my office, immediately!" he ordered, then turned to Isabel with a face that tried to remain calm. "Miss Moreau, I am very sorry for what happened. We will take this matter seriously. Please." But Isabel cut her off. "I won't say anything more here. My lawyer will contact your police department." With that, she turned, looking for the family car that had just pulled up nearby. She needed to get away from this place, away from the curious eyes and the two people who had just put her through one of the worst experiences of her life. As soon as Isabel Moreau left, her black luxury sedan rolling out of the airport area, a real storm began to rage at the Los Angeles Airport Police Department. The supervising sergeant immediately reported the incident to his superiors, and the mention of the name U.S. Attorney Marcus Moreau sent shockwaves through the entire chain of command. No one wanted to be the focus of such a powerful figure's wrath, especially when the incident involved allegations of racism and abuse of power, extremely sensitive issues. The next morning, Isabel, with the help of a top family attorney, filed a detailed formal complaint with the LAXPD Internal Affairs Division and the Los Angeles Police Department. Her report detailed every verbal and physical act of harassment and abuse from Doyle and O'Connell, from the initial teasing, to the escalation of insults, to the unjustified arrest and handcuffing. She highlighted racial, gender, and social class biases in the way they commented on her clothing and money. The internal investigation was conducted with unprecedented speed and seriousness. Police department leaders knew they were under intense scrutiny, not only by the Moreau family, but also by the media if the story leaked out. They had to act quickly and transparently. Frank Doyle and Tim O'Connell were immediately suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. Both were called in for questioning several times. Faced with seasoned internal affairs investigators, their flimsy defenses quickly fell apart. They tried to blame Isabel for being provocative and uncooperative, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security camera video, clearly captures them approaching Isabel, circling her, and then physically restraining and handcuffing her. Video from witness phones. Several passengers provided video footage of parts of the conversation, including Doyle's rude words and arrogant attitude, as well as Isabel's verbal resistance. In particular, several videos captured the moment of panic and the 180-degree change in attitude of the two police officers after Isabel revealed who her father was. This is fatal evidence that their initial actions were not based on reasonable suspicion, but on prejudice and malicious intent. Inconsistent testimony. Doyle and O'Connell's testimony was filled with inconsistencies, both between themselves and with video evidence and witness testimony. Fear made them increasingly confused as they spoke. The police union sent representatives to assist Doyle and O'Connell during their depositions, but given the overwhelming evidence and the serious nature of the case involving the daughter of a federal prosecutor, the union's role was limited. They could not justify such blatant harassment and abuse of power. The pressure was mounting. There were rumors that Prosecutor Moreau, although not directly involved in the police investigation, had expressed his deep concerns about the case to city officials and senior police leaders through unofficial channels. After about 3 weeks of intense investigation, the Internal Affairs Division completed its report. The conclusion could not be clearer. Officer Frank Doyle and Officer Tim O'Connell committed a series of serious violations, including conducting unreasonable stops, using harassing and discriminatory language, abusing their authority, and engaging in conduct that brought discredit to the police force. The report specifically highlighted the officers' sudden change in demeanor upon learning of Isabel's identity as evidence of impure motives and intentional abuse of power. The final decision was made by the Chief of Airport Police after consulting with the Police Inspector General. The official announcement was made. Frank Doyle and Tim O'Connell were fired from the Los Angeles Airport Police Force, effective immediately. For Frank Doyle, it was the end of a nearly 2-decade career that ended in disgrace and infamy. For Tim O'Connell, youthful mistakes and bad example cost him the chance to build a future in law enforcement. Both faced the difficult prospect of finding new employment with this stain on their records. Weeks after receiving the news of the firing of the two police officers, Isabel Moreau sat in her attorney's office in downtown Los Angeles, looking down at the traffic below. She had received a formal apology from the head of the airport police department. Justice, in a way, had been served. The two men who had insulted and humiliated her had paid the price. But she didn't feel a sense of complete victory. Instead, she felt a heavy sense of reflection. She couldn't help but think that if she weren't Isabel Moreau, the daughter of federal prosecutor Marcus Moreau, but just another ordinary black girl, no matter how well dressed, would the outcome be the same? Would her complaint have been treated quickly and seriously? Would the two police officers have been fired or received only light discipline or even dropped altogether? She realized a harsh truth about privilege. Her father's name, her family's status, had become an invisible shield protecting her, bringing her justice in a way that not everyone had. That made her, a lawyer who believed in equality before the law, feel extremely tormented. True justice must be for everyone, regardless of who they are, what their family background is. This incident, though painful, left a valuable lesson in Isabel's mind. It did not make her lose faith in the law, but on the contrary, it motivated her to work harder in her career. She was determined to use her knowledge and abilities to fight for the weak, the voiceless, the victims of injustice and discrimination without the shield of privilege like she had. That was the only way to turn this terrible experience into a positive force, to ensure that Isabel's story was not just about privilege, but also about responsibility and aspiration towards a truly equal justice for all. She looked towards the city courthouse in the distance, her eyes filled with determination. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.